to another episode of the It's the Pictures podcast. This is episode 203, and I am your host, Max Colville. I'm once again on my own this week as I gave Evan the week off because I'm using this episode as a TIFF festival wrap-up. I have a lot of films to talk about that I saw during the 3rd, 4th, and 5th days of the festival that I didn't cover on the bonus episode. There's a lot of news out there that I wanted to get to covered, and figured it could go into a full episode. So, let's go right into the news, and perhaps the biggest news of all was that Robert Redford, the great Robert Redford, passed away the other day at the age of 89. Apparently, from the trades, he said that he had passed away in his sleep. Of course, Redford was an icon in film and what he did for the film industry. First appearing on screen in movies such as Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Sting, All the President's Men, so forth, and then directing the Academy Award-winning film Ordinary People. And in his later career, he also appeared in movies such as All Is Lost, Pete's Dragon, and The Old Man and the Gun. I really enjoy a lot of Robert Redford's movies. Some that I haven't even named yet is something like Sneakers, which is a really enjoyable little film. I haven't seen Barefoot in the Park yet, but apparently that's where he got his big start. So Redford was, very well known throughout cinema and cinema history, but even more so than being an actor and director, he is known for getting the Sundance Film Festival started. Without the festival and the Sundance Institute, we likely wouldn't have heard of some of the directors that have come out of there. I wrote an article on the Substack newsletter about it and how Damien Chazelle's Whiplash won the jury prize for Best Short at the Sundance Film Festival, and that kind of publicity and attention allowed him to get the funding he needed to turn Whiplash into a feature film. And, the rest is history. He's gone on to direct La La Land, First Man, and Babylon after delivering Whiplash. So, Robert Redford, he'll be greatly missed. I loved him in a lot of movies. I think probably The Sting and All the President's Men are my two favorite Robert Redford performances. I saw 3 Days of the Condor for the first time last year, and that one's pretty great too. He's just such a fantastic on-screen persona, and he'll be greatly missed. I mean, I could probably sit here and talk a whole episode about Robert Redford's contributions to cinema. And if you want to see more about what I wrote about him, you can go to the newsletter. It's thepictures.substack.com and read about Robert Redford. I hope you find a movie of his to watch if you haven't seen one or haven't seen one in a long time. A lot of his work still holds up. In other news about film, the Paul Thomas Anderson movie One Battle After Another has been reviewed by critics, I believe out of LA, Chicago, and New York, because Boston has not had the opportunity to screen the movie yet, but the raves are electric. They're saying that Paul Thomas Anderson's latest, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, is a surefire Best Picture nominee, if not winner. For those who don't recognize the name Paul Thomas Anderson, I think a few years back we had a guest on who went long on PTA, and he has a very, very, well, let's say excellent library or filmography of films to his name. Movies such as Boogie Nights, Magnolia, There Will Be Blood, Inherent Vice, The Master. Most recently, the last two were Phantom Thread and Licorice Pizza. And I find myself, I think I enjoy every one of his movies. I think he's a master filmmaker. And this was, I guess, his first collaboration with Leonardo DiCaprio. Warner Brothers gave him I think the biggest budget he's ever had at $150 million to make this film. And, it's come out excellent. Not only does it star DiCaprio, but I think Sean Penn is in a supporting role. The movie, and Benicio del Toro, I remember in the trailer, but the movie is like almost 3 hours long. Similar to Warner Brothers' rollout with Sinners earlier this year, the movie is rolling out on many different large theater formats. So I know in Boston, if you had the opportunity to go to the Coolidge Corner Theater, they're one of the 4 theaters in the world that are going to have the privilege and ability to run one battle after another in a VistaVision format, and that's pretty impressive if you're one who wants to see the movie not only on film but maybe the best format possible. You might want to take a trek up to the Coolidge Corner Theater when the movie comes out in, I think, 2 weeks' time. But I'm very eager to see it. I think I've seen like a few movies that I would consider surefire Oscar Best Picture nominees, but I'm glad to hear that this one is included in that mix. The next news just came like down the wire last night before I recorded, that Jimmy Kimmel's late night show was being put on hold indefinitely due to some comments he made about the late Charlie Kirk on his broadcast. Listening to the words that Fallon made on the broadcast, he wasn't necessarily mentioning Kirk or saying anything negative about the man, but rather the GOP's response to the man's death. From my standpoint, I think it's terrible that they're silencing free speech in America. If comedians can't talk about events, then that kind of ruins a lot of, free speech boundaries. And I think from my part, from what I've learned about Kirk and his life, I don't think he's a man that should be championed. I've heard that ABC6 and its affiliates are going to be putting like a tribute together for him, preempting Jimmy Kimmel on Friday night, and I don't believe that's in the best taste. I don't believe that Kirk should be getting the attention that he deserves, that he is currently receiving. He's a public citizen, and I'm going to leave it mostly at that. But I think it's really a sad state for America that a comedian is getting told he can't work due to some kind of like light comments he made. In the background, it looks like there's a merger that's trying to be made between big conglomerates, and they need the president to sign off of. And also, Jimmy Kimmel is not the only person that is out of work right now, and he can certainly absorb it. But the 200 people that also work on the Kimmel show, they will be out of work until the show resumes. And, that is a really, really sad state of affairs. So hopefully they get it solved sooner rather than later, and Kimmel and company can return to air and do what they do best, providing Americans with entertainment. And I guess to tie into our conversation this evening, because I'll be talking about the other films that I saw at the Toronto International Film Festival, since the last episode, TIFF has tallied the votes on the winner of the TIFF's People's Choice Award. Historically, the award has gone to a film, and that film has, in turn, kind of took that momentum into a Best Picture nomination. Previous years, I think like there was movies like Belfast and The Shape of Water. I can't recall all of them, and I don't have them all in front of me. But last year was like, I think American Fiction was 2 years ago. I went and it won the TIFF People's Choice, and then it got a Best Picture nomination. But last year was The Life of Chuck, and that movie decided for a smaller like summer release, so it didn't really turn into a Best Picture nomination. But this year, the audience has awarded Chloe Zhao's Hamnet the TIFF People's Choice Award, and having seen the film, which I'll talk about shortly, I certainly believe that it's going to be Best Picture nominated. This is definitely going to be one of the ones in the conversation late this year, 2025, and come Oscar season next year. So I think they'll continue their great streak of picking films over there in Toronto. All right, so moving on to the films that I saw at the festival, right? I had talked about films, I guess, up to either The Coral or Steal Away last time. I ended up seeing 19 movies at TIFF over my 5 days there, or 6 days, I think, and I was pretty burnt out at the end, but I was still able to take in a lot of movies and enjoy them. And one of the ones that I didn't get to talk about yet, which if you go on the newsletter again, I talked about some of the ones on these later days that I really enjoyed. This one is one that would be in like the top 5 that I saw, and it was called The Testament of Anne Lee. And I wrote, imagine if Amanda Seyfried of Mamma Mia fame were the female embodiment of Christ, and that this is also a lengthy epic about religion and the founding of the Shaker movement. Now, also imagine that it's a musical. That's what director Mona Fastvold and co-writer Brady Corbett have created with their new, bizarre musical that Vulture critic Bilge Ebiri said he'd never seen anything like it. The movie follows the full breadth of Anne Lee's life from birth to death, and how when she was born, she was quickly repulsed by adults' human desires for flesh. That kind of followed her into adulthood, where she reluctantly married a blacksmith played by Christopher Abbott and proceeds to have 4 deeply painful childbirths and 4 child deaths. The sequence is pretty hollowing when they show like her, it's still a musical during the sequence, but she's also going through this great amount of pain. And I don't know. I don't think the movie would have worked without the full commitment of the cast. I thought the music was fantastic. It was by the same composer that worked with Brady Corbett on his movie The Brutalist, which came out last year, so you can know what to expect. But they also rearranged some classical Shaker hymns to use for their purposes of the movie. So don't be surprised if you're playing a soundtrack of Shaker hymns come when Anne Lee is actually released. If there's like one thing about it, it has like some instances have a tone problem. And even though I thought Louis Pullman was fantastic in this movie, he plays Anne Lee's brother. There's a specific sequence where they're looking for land for their new Shaker kind of village, and it's played out like very silly, where like one of the guys gets like a message from God, and like his index finger is pointed in the direction of where they must build, and they kind of run after it, and it has those. That's probably the silliest thing, but I don't think that the movie will work for everyone. Some will be confused that we're watching like interpretive dance musical numbers tied to like such sorrow, and others will shout blasphemy at the screen because they'll never believe that Christ could take on the body of a woman. But for myself, not only did I love the interpretive dances that they did and the score, but I also thought Amanda Seyfried was terrific. I'd be shattered if I don't, maybe not shattered, maybe that's too much of a word, but like very disappointed if she doesn't get attention this award season. I think she's absolutely terrific and sells it. And I don't think I've ever seen her in a role like this before. I typically kind of discarded her previous roles, whether in Mamma Mia, Les Mis, or other things that she's been in, but she really goes for it all here, and I thought it was pretty fantastic. The next movie I want to talk about that I didn't write about was this British movie called Bad Apples. And it's mainly a Saoirse Ronan vehicle, British movie, where she is a teacher of a lower school class. And on the whole, the class is pretty great. They listen and everything, but there's one troublesome student that kind of throws everything off. He's always getting into trouble, and he disrupts the class, and it's a problem. And she's trying to get in contact with the child's father, and the father is very hands off. He's pretty much just working to support his family, and he doesn't have time to be with his son. He's just always working. So the kid is, a problem child who doesn't receive any support at home. And when there's questions upon whether or not he should be in a different program where he can get more help, the teachers kind of discuss that he cannot afford that kind of help. And then if there's a chance for more support in the classroom, the school can't support another teacher to help him. So all in all, it's just a terrible situation. One evening, Saoirse Ronan's character as his teacher is out and about, and she finds him like vandalizing cars during a rainstorm and just like really getting into trouble. She tries to stop him, but in doing so kind of tackles him and chokes him out, like makes him pass out. When he wakes up in the back of her car, she's driving him to the hospital just to get him checked out, and he threatens her and says that he's going to report her and she's going to lose her job. So ultimately what she decides to do is drive the child back to her home and chain him up in her basement. And what follows is everybody believes that he's disappeared, and since he's such a bad kid, there's not really a big super movement to find him. But she feels kind of guilty. She tries to teach him why he's kind of kidnapped in her basement and tries to help him along. So it goes kind of weird places. Some people said it's like maybe trying to do Alexander Payne's Election in a new way. That movie also featured like Matthew Broderick as a teacher who kind of like hated his student, played by Reese Witherspoon at the time. So I could see that connection, but I don't know. It was kind of unbelievable. The how it ends is pretty outrageous, pretty funny, but I don't know. It's tough to recommend. I think it will have a hard time like selling what the movie is, but when people find it like on streaming somewhere, they might enjoy it. The next one I saw was Wake Up Dead Man, which I have a full review up at Pop Heist, which is a newer website. It's kind of come up within the last year, and this one is another mystery made by director Ryan Johnson, starring Daniel Craig as the lead detective Benoit Blanc, and following the previous entries, Knives Out and Glass Onion. This one's a lot more somber than those. It takes place at a church, and it's kind of like this closed door mystery, kind of getting inspiration more from like Edgar Allan Poe and some of the darker things. Maybe think of like Death in Venice, that kind of take on the murder mystery kind of thing. The cast is pretty great. This time, actor Jack O'Connell is really the signature kind of character that the audience moves through the events with. The cast also includes actors such as Josh Brolin, Glenn Close, Andrew Scott, Kaylee Spaney, Jeremy Renner, Mila Kunis, probably some other ones, Kerry Washington, some other ones that I'm kind of forgetting. But I actually liked it probably the least out of the three that have come out. I don't know. I just wasn't really super excited about it. Not that it's a bad movie or it was poorly made. I just enjoyed the fun of the other two movies more so than this. And also Daniel Craig's character, Benoit Blanc, is kind of sidelined for the first like 40 minutes of the movie while the initial mystery kind of plays out. And for me, he's kind of some of the reason to see these movies. And in Glass Onion, he was really in it full time because he was in on when the murder happened. But this is, he kind of comes in later and kind of reminds me like the setup of Ryan Johnson's TV series Poker Face, which also takes after the old Peter Falk Columbo episodes where like you see the murder happen and it takes like 25 minutes before the detective comes into the frame and tries to figure it out. And I don't know, I just felt like he was kind of missed there at the beginning. So that's Wake Up Dead Man. It comes out like later this year. I think middle December it will be streaming on Netflix. So keep an eye out for that if you like the Knives Out films. I think you'll still enjoy it. The next one that I saw is Rental Family, and I think this is a 20th century release, and it stars Brendan Fraser, Academy Award-winning actor Brendan Fraser, who won for his portrayal in The Whale. This one, everything about it is kind of like in my wheelhouse. I love movies about exploring other countries, especially Japan. Um, Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation, despite its condescending attitude towards the Japanese people and culture, I still kind of fell in love with it. And maybe I took a different viewpoint for it, where like all the places that they visit, I kind of loved and wanted to try them all. I know since seeing that movie, we got stuff like Guitar Hero and Rock Band here, and that was really cool to try after seeing it in Lost in Translation first. I've been to hot pot restaurants where I don't think I could have imagined what it was before seeing Lost in Translation. I've always wanted to go to like a karaoke bar that they go to as well. So yeah, enough about Lost in Translation, because I still really like that movie. But I was excited to see director Hikari, who she's known for her directing work on the Netflix series Beef that came out a few years back. This is her, I believe, first feature film. And it has a lot of elements with like this found family idea, something that director Hirokazu Koreeda specializes in. His movies I really like as well. Movies like Shoplifters and like Father Like Son. Um, so it's nice to see that kind of element here. Fraser plays an American actor named Philip Vanderploe, who came to Japan a few years back for a promotional campaign. And after the campaign was over, he stayed in Japan and started looking for more work. But he quickly finds that it's difficult. One day he gets called by this agency looking to see if he can attend a funeral, and a scenario straight out of Nathan Fielder's hit HBO Max TV show, The Rehearsal. Philip is asked to attend a funeral where the supposed deceased person is very much alive. It was just the man wanted to see what it would be like at his funeral and see how people thought about him in his life, and it would give him the confidence that he needed. So it's decided after that performance that Philip will get more work with this agency that is controlled by this man named Shinji, and he is played by Takehiro Hira. And the agency is known as Rental Family. And they really do this in Japan, where actors are hired out to take places in other people's families or do certain duties. This is not just a made-up idea that Hikari came up with herself to make this movie. It's a real thing if you look into it. But so Brendan Fraser's character kind of starts with like smaller things. He stands in for a wedding where he has to like play that he's like the fiance and like get married to this woman, and it's just a ruse to kind of make the bride's family believe that she's getting married to a man and is going to be taken care of, and that means a lot to her. There's another one where Brendan Fraser's character has to pretend he's a journalist, so that way he can kind of investigate and like record the life of an actor who maybe wasn't super famous, but it would make the actor feel better about his life and his accomplishments. But the biggest role that he had to take on during the course of the movie is that he has to play the role of a father. I guess in Japanese culture, there's a lot of things about having a full family and not being divorced, and this mother has aspirations for her child to go to a private school, and so there needs to be like a complete family with a father involved in order to look good during the process and help make it so that her daughter will get into this program. So he has to kind of play this role of like an absent father who has just come back at this time and like try to reconnect with this girl. And I don't know, it's hard to imagine just playing the role of a father, especially as a father myself. So that was kind of emotionally heartwarming for me. There's some like, I think the movie won me over. It's very sappy, and like if you go into it with that expectation, I think you'll still enjoy it. But there was a lot of elements in there that made me think of other films that I love. So maybe I was gonna be into it anyways. Okay, some other films that I did not talk about on the newsletter. There is this Brazilian animated film called Arco, which is I think it's being distributed by Neon in America. And it is kind of executive produced by Natalie Portman, and it's directed by Hugo Benavio. And it's about this young boy who's 12 years old named Arco, lives in the future, and he decides that even though he's not allowed to fly yet and time travel, that he's going to give it a whirl at 12 years old. And he sets off and tries to do it. Of course, things go wrong, and he ends up in the past. This past is in the year 2075, where there's a lot of advances in our society, but like there's also a lot of absentee feelings. I say that because this little girl, Iris, lives with her like infant sibling, and the parents are never there. They pretty much like visit via this like this movable movable projector that like walks around the house, and the like holograms up and take care of the children. But the physical nanny is really like this robot that oversees like their care, and it's very like hands off and hollow, and I can't imagine that the satisfaction level is very high. In fact, Iris during the course of the movie wishes that she'd have someone or a friend, and so when Arco finally arrives, she is very excited to see him. The movie has a pretty great idea of the future, or at least an interesting one, that really took me in. There were some characters that I didn't really necessarily love, and it kind of lost me. But on a whole, it's a neat little movie. I don't think like it's anywhere near like my favorite animated feature of the year, but if you're looking for something about the connection between children and the future, and just like an exciting new vision in animation, then I'd suggest giving Arco a try. The next movie I saw was this movie called Love+War, and this one is a documentary film coming to National Geographic. It is the documentary on the life of Pulitzer Prize winning photographer Lindsay Addario. She's more like a crisis photographer, because the movie starts off describing that she likes to like make her living by taking photography and videography in war zones. Specifically, at the beginning, it's Ukraine, and her pictures are on the front page of the New York Times, and she risk everything to take these pictures and bring awareness to devastating situations around the world. That's part of the documentary. The other part of the documentary is really about how she manages her home life, where she has 2 children and her husband, and she's gone for long lengths of time. She really makes a big sacrifice to cover these world events. And the documentary goes on to talk about not only her time in Ukraine, but her other visits around crisis zones around the world, and how dangerous it is, and how she's feared for her life on many occasions. It also talks about how her photography has been used to fix situations around the world or help people. So she's really great person that I didn't know about, and for that I thought the documentary is pretty interesting, and how she kind of navigates this double life. She was there at the TIFF screening, and she said like I think she like said that she wasn't necessarily an adrenaline junkie, because like this director of this documentary also did the film Free Solo, and I thought like maybe they were going to follow all these people who like were doing these crazy things, and just for the love of doing it or what have you, and seeing how their minds tick to take on these really risky and dangerous things. But no, I think she's just motivated by the good that she can do for these people. So that day was filled with all sorts of different television, rather movies. I had animation with Arco. I had a documentary with Love+War. And then I sat down for, it wasn't really on my schedule, but I sat down for a new concert film called Epic. And that is short for Elvis Presley in Concert. And apparently, Baz Luhrmann, the director of Elvis with Austin Butler that came out a few years ago, found a lot of footage when he was kind of prepping for his movie. And he decided he wasn't done with Elvis yet. So he kind of put together this concert film documentary. I say like it's almost like a hybrid because the movie starts and it gives you a brief history of Elvis where you go into his stardom and you get into his arrest and his drafting and into war and the loss of his mother. But like then it like kind of fast forwards and most of the movie takes place via footage recorded when he was in Vegas later in his career. And no, it's not like the broken down Elvis. It's early Vegas days, and like there's some studio recordings as well that maybe were unseen. And what makes the concert film really worthwhile is that all the footage has been blown up for IMAX cinema. And I saw it on the IMAX screen in Toronto, and it was awesome. I don't think I've ever seen Elvis like that before. The footage is fantastic. It's full frame IMAX. It's not like, I'm not sure how much my audience is familiar with IMAX going experience, but sometimes when you go and they promise an IMAX feature, it's not full IMAX frame. It's most of it, and the sound quality is really good. But there's few and far between when you're getting full IMAX frame. That's why maybe a lot of people go to IMAX to see Christopher Nolan movies. He's famous for using the whole picture, if you will. I remember the argument back in the day, right, when I guess DVD came out. There was this argument that there was the black bars because the movies are recorded in like a widescreen format for movie theaters, and when you would play them on TVs, your TVs would be square, right? And so there was a lot of black bars, and people were very frustrated, and they wanted full screen pictures, even if it cut off the sides. That's not the case here with this IMAX footage. It's formatted correctly to that size, and it's just terrific. Why I wouldn't say that I'm a hardcore Elvis fan. Like I know his music, especially from watching the movie a few years back and delving into his discography. I knew a good bit of the songs, and the ones that I really wanted to hear were featured in the concert film. So I was happy about that. And I'm not sure when this plans to make its like theatrical debut in IMAX films. I don't know what the schedule for IMAX is, but if you're an Elvis fan and this is probably the most amazing way to see him in concert. From what I've heard, that there might not be as much new footage as is advertised because people I've talked to remember seeing some of this footage on other concert films, but to see it in this way with that sound is well worth the drive to your nearest IMAX film when that opens. That's Epic, Elvis Presley in Concert, directed by Baz Luhrmann. And then later that evening, I saw a film that I was really eager to see. It was this movie called The Secret Agent. It's being distributed by Neon, so it will get a good theatrical run. It won the Best Actor award at the Cannes Film Festival, among other awards, I believe. And it's hard to explain what it is because it's the title of the film is kind of like a misnomer. There's no real secret agents in this movie, even though like I kind of wanted it to be. It's really the director Kelber Mendoza Filho. He had made a documentary, I guess, about Brazil in the 1970s before. And by making that documentary, he wanted to then make a feature film of that era in Brazil. And this is like a fictional film about this man named Marcelo, who is a technology expert in his early 40s, and he's on the run from this big conglomerate who wanted to steal his patents and wanted him out of the way, so they hired hitman to kind of like track him down and kill him. but he's also just trying to get out of the city with his son. But he realizes soon that he's got to find a lot of difficulty in getting away. And I don't know, the movie's very long. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes. And there's like a lot of like non sequitur bits that like didn't make a lot of sense to me. It's like, oh, I think the director was kind of in love with those moments because he remembered them in his own childhood, but they didn't really convert very well to this film and keeping it on rails. So I wasn't like really enamored by the movie. I thought it was a little long, but I agree that Wagner Mura was very good. I guess I wasn't familiar with him in his other roles, but he's most known for playing like Pablo Escobar in the Narcs series, I think. It says here that he's also been in movies like Civil War, The Gray Man, and Elysium, but I don't think I've seen all those or wouldn't have been able to pick him out. But this movie, he's fantastic, and I wouldn't be surprised if he still gets other acting awards from film critics' bodies later this year. The next day, let's see, the next day was Monday, I believe, and yeah, that was going to be the grand finale of my festival time. I woke up super early in the morning because there was I guess there was a press and industry screening for the new Chloe Zhao movie Hamnet in the morning. I forget if it was like 8:15 or 8:45, probably 8:45, and I think I was there at 7:15. And there was a lot of big hype for the movie because it had opened at Telluride a few days earlier and that received rave reviews. And I guess like there was a public screening of it before the PNI in the Roy Thompson Hall, which is the biggest venue during the Toronto Film Festival. So there were some critics on the ground that had seen it and been really moved. So there was a big push to get in. This is the new movie by Chloe Zhao. Again, she is the director of past movies like The Rider, to a lesser extent, Marvel's Eternals, and the Academy Award-winning movie Nomadland. And this is an adaptation of a 2020 novel that is fictional. It imagines like a story of William Shakespeare and his home life and his children, and that he was inspired to write Hamlet based on the loss of his 11-year-old son, Hamnet. And in the movie, Paul Mescal plays William Shakespeare, and Jessie Buckley plays his wife, Agnes. And you would think like a movie like this would really all be about Shakespeare, but it's really Jessie Buckley's movie. She's the one who like is the towering force throughout it, and really the center of everything that happens. And in my review of the movie on the newsletter, I said it's aggressively depressing, and yeah, it's a tough sit, but like it's definitely a fascinating one as well, because when I was in the movie theater, you could hear people like just weeping all around me based on what was happening on screen in the material. And sometimes it's fun to go to a movie theater and hear that kind of reaction. Often I think some of the most fun reactions that I hear at theaters are either from comedies or horror films. Generally, things that you can hear the audience kind of get involved with. It's rare to really go to the movie theater and see a weeper and have it affect so many people. But yeah, I could see like how this is going to be a slam dunk Best Picture nominee. I think after it won the TIFF People's Choice Award, it will keep on gaining momentum. And certainly Paul Mescal and Jessie Buckley, no matter where they put their hats in for acting awards, they'll certainly be in the conversation. I just thought it was a really well done movie. I guess like one knock against it, and other critics have made this, is that Chloe Zhao hired composer Max Richter to kind of do the score for this. And Max Richter's most famous piece of music is probably this song called "In the Nature of Daylight," and it was used in the movie Arrival, which I love. And I guess someone told me most recently in The Last of Us season 2. And so the song is like reached kind of like mass familiarity, I guess. And so like when you hear it come on, you know that it's kind of like meant to be there to tug at your heartstrings, and it can be kind of cynical to hear it come on. Um, I don't know if that necessarily ruins that for me, but it's just a note. And if you're not into movies as much as I am or some other people, I mean, I assume if you're listening to this podcast, you are, and you're familiar with that track. We'll see how much traction it has for you and whether or not it takes you out of the movie or not. But either way, I imagine Hamnet is going to be in a lot of conversations at the end of this year. So, yeah, get ready to add it to your viewing list, I guess, even if you don't want to sit through it due to its material. It's going to be one of those ones that a lot of people are talking about. The next one I saw, I was very eager to see because I'm a big fan of Guillermo del Toro, and it's his new Netflix adaptation of Frankenstein. It's really a direct adaptation of Mary Shelley's classic novel. I don't think like it does necessarily anything all that new to the story of Frankenstein. It's kind of separated into two parts where first you have Victor Frankenstein, the creator's story, and how he was brought up and what drove him to create his great creation, and his kind of on again, off again romance with this young woman played by Mia Goth. And I guess there's a new character added to this version of Frankenstein who becomes Victor Frankenstein's financer, and he's played by actor Christoph Waltz, who you might remember most memorably from *Inglourious Bastards*. He's always terrific, so he's welcome in here. Victor Frankenstein is played by Oscar Isaac, and I don't know. I guess like once that first section is pretty familiar. The only difference is that I guess Del Toro has been giving a very large budget from Netflix, so it looks immaculate. Like whoever did the set design and the costume design, like this is a very lavish production of Frankenstein, and that's pretty awesome to see. The movie gets better when it transitions into its second half, its other story, which focuses really on the journey of the creature. And the creature this is played by actor Jacob Elordi. I think he was on the show Euphoria, but like for me, I where I know him from best is the Emerald Fennell movie Saltburn that came out like 2 years ago. So he's in a lot of makeup, obviously, to play the creature, but it's still a really wonderful performance by him. I didn't necessarily expect it, but it's funny to say that he's the heart of the film, given that he's literally given a heart. But he's great in it, and I like how it comes together. I like some of the different mythos that like Del Toro adds to the story, like this great like tragedy of the creature is that he's been given life, but no one necessarily asked him if he could have this life, and ultimately he can't even decide when he's going to die. So he is ultimately really burdened by what Victor Frankenstein has done. But that comes out, I think it's coming out in theaters in the middle of October, so it's very soon, and then it will be on Netflix at the beginning of November if you want to check it out. I think like the greatest injustice though is when like a lot of people are probably gonna find this film on Netflix and watch it on their televisions, and the big selling point of this movie is its beautiful production, and I think it really should be seen in a theater. I guess I should mention that it has a soundtrack by composer Alexander Desplat, who I've interviewed previously, and I don't think it's one of his strongest. It wasn't terribly memorable. While I didn't see the Phoenician Scheme earlier this year, which was a Wes Anderson movie, he also often works with Wes Anderson. So I wonder if he had a score for that one too. Um, but yeah, not particularly my favorite Alexander Desplat score, but um, well, we'll see. On a whole, like I gave the movie like a B. I still enjoyed it, and it's probably my favorite Del Toro since The Shape of Water. Not that his stop motion version of Pinocchio is bad. I think it's pretty good, but it's just not what I wanted. I think his Nightmare Alley is kind of totally misguided. I don't really like that all too much. And there's plans in October to that Criterion is going to release a extended version of Nightmare Alley on black and white, like in black and white on 4K discs. So like if you've never seen it, or if you've seen it and you feel like you can give it another chance, there's a new way to watch it that Del Toro has tinkered with the film. I like Guillermo del Toro's movies enough that I will probably be interested in seeing what he's done, but I don't have a terrible lot of hope for that because I think just Nightmare Alley was a kind of failed project for him. And finally, the final movie that I saw at TIFF was this movie called The Smashing Machine, and that's coming out very soon. I think in like 2 weeks. It is the movie that won the Golden Lion Award at the Venice Film Festival for Best Director for director Benny Safdie. Benny Safdie is, of course, one half of the Safdie brothers. Probably best known now for their movie Uncut Gems that came out a few years ago. And The Smashing Machine is really a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson vehicle where he's taking on the role of mixed martial artist Mark Kerr. Kerr was kind of like a forebearer of what UFC would become. He was UFC before there was really UFC. They didn't make a lot of money back then, but that he was maybe there at the wrong time, because if he was around today, he would have made a ton of money. But yeah, The Rock takes on this, Dwayne Johnson rather, takes on this performance, and it's pretty familiar performance for him. He's in a ring. Kerr was a wrestler by trade, not like WWE wrestling like Dwayne Johnson was, but real college level, professional level wrestling, like ground wrestling. So Johnson might have been familiar with that. He does like have some prosthetics on his face and stuff to try to like morph into Kerr a little bit more. I guess it helps. He doesn't look like himself, like Dwayne Johnson all the time, and Johnson can be very recognizable, right? And I don't know. I think like I wanted to see a movie that was more about like the rise of a fighter, like typical like what you expect from like Rocky or something. But Benny Safdie and Dwayne Johnson have decided to really just focus on, a difficult period for Mark Kerr, is abuse of painkillers and his relationship with his then girlfriend Dawn, who was played by Emily Blunt. This is actually the second collaboration for Blunt and Johnson after Disney's The Jungle Cruise, which when I mentioned Jungle Cruise to people in their previous collaboration, they just laugh because they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that movie. But yeah, I don't know. I liked it. I think like it's trying to be, or maybe I envisioned it as trying to be a UFC movie akin to like Martin Scorsese's Raging Bull, because it's similar, like rise and fall of a fighter. But Mark Kerr is the real Mark Kerr is a much different person. He's very soft spoken, and the UFC and fighting mixed martial arts that is depicted in this movie is like everyone's friends, even though they're knocking each other out. And so like there's like it's hugs and everyone's posing for photographs. It's like it's kind of warm and fuzzy, and you wouldn't expect that in a sport like this, and that kind of like plays a little weird. I'd argue that like the most intense element of the movie doesn't come from inside the octagon or in the ring, but rather between the messy relationship between Kerr and Dawn. It gets pretty hairy at some points, and I appreciate that there's a lot of talk about there was a they constructed this house that they use in the movie. So Benny Safdie and his production crew, and they hid cameras all over the house. So it almost looks like a Big Brother esque like footage where like no one's setting for cameras. It doesn't feel like they have marks. It feels like very organic about what they're doing, and that kind of heightens some of the drama inside the house, which I appreciate. But I don't know. I liked it. I think like it's more of like a B minus C plus film. You really want to see it for Dwayne Johnson and see like him in a movie that is unexpected for him nowadays. He's been in a lot of big Hollywood popcorn movies, be it like Jumanji or the aforementioned Jungle Cruise, or I could go on and name them, but this is definitely serious Dwayne Johnson. So if you want to check that out, that's The Smashing Machine. It's coming to theaters via A24 at the beginning of October. I have one more film that is not part of TIFF. So before I get to that, I'm going to give pause for some station identification. You've been listening to the It's the Pictures podcast. I'm your host, Max Colville, and often I am joined by my co-host, Evan Crean. You can follow us on Blue Sky at It's the Pictures or It's the Pic Pod. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Max Colville, maxcolville.com. Evan can be found most places at Real, that's spelled REEL, Recon, and you can find him, most social media places under that moniker. And if you want to email us with questions or comments, it's thepictures@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Letterboxd or Instagram. If you were looking for the podcast and you're listening to it right now on Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube, know that it's available in all those different places. If you comment, if you review, it helps us reach a larger audience and, continue to do what we love to do. And that is talk about movies and talk to you as listeners. Okay, so the other thing that I was watching and a screener that I was able to catch up with before it expired was from the Venice Film Festival. And it was this movie called Newport and the Great Folk Dream. And unsurprisingly, this is another movie, a documentary about the Newport Folk Festival. And during that very prime time era in the early 60s, with Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, and Pete Seeger. And this documentary was kind of like in the works for a while because there's a more famous documentary about this era at the Newport Film Festival literally called Festival. And that's available via Criterion Collection and on home video if you want. But I guess there was more footage found recently, and they wanted to compile it into a movie, and maybe they were having a hard time with seeing why they wanted to do it. But the Bob Dylan movie that came out last year with Timothée Chalamet kind of renewed interest in this era of the folk festival. So they were like, oh, we have an audience now. They're going to be interested thanks to that Bob Dylan movie that they saw last year. And it's cool like that you get some of that footage that like they kind of repeated in the Timothée Chalamet movie. You get to see like where it actually happened on set at the folk festival. And I don't know, I felt like it was a very similar movie to Festival, and like maybe it didn't have too much more to add other than like these new performances. And while I was watching, I remember thinking like one of the things that I liked about this is in television and movies, when you see titles and names on the screen, it's known as like putting text in the lower third of the footage. And in this new movie, Newport and the Great Folk Dream, they've put the names of the performers and the songs that they were singing. And that was something that like the original festival when it came out years ago did not have. And I guess it's a special feature on the Criterion to find out like who is actually performing. And not for nothing, but not having lived in that era, it's really nice to have who's performing in front of you and to see it. The documentary not only shows these performances, but really what's going on in the world during that time and how young people are being, more involved with politics. And then you had the assassination of JFK, and you had folk music kind of turning electric with Bob Dylan. And it was a really ripe time for change in America with young people and music. And I guess for that reason, these two movies, I'll call them like sister movies, Newport and the Great Folk Dream and the previous released festival, really capture a time that is important in history. I guess your mileage may vary on how excited you would be to watch a Newport folk festival documentary today from that era. I don't know. I don't know what their plans are for release yet. It's a fine movie, but yeah, maybe me. I'm in the Northeast. I live in Rhode Island. Folk festival is here. It takes place like 25 minutes from me. I can see audience listening to this podcast around this area might be more interested than those around the world, but I think it's still a pretty fascinating topic. So that is Newport and the Great Folk Dream, and that premiered at Venice, and we'll see what its ultimate plans are. Either way, thank you for listening today and hearing about the TIFF Film Festival. We have another episode coming up in 2 weeks' time. One of the possible category things that I was thinking about and I pitched to Evan was this idea of maybe looking into Paul Thomas Anderson once again, given the release of One Battle After Another coming out. And we'll see. I'll talk to Evan more about that, and we'll make our plans for the next episode. But again, thank you for listening, and have a good one. Bye.